time for Cutting Edge Consciousness with Freeman Michaels and Barnet Bain. Thought-provoking discussions and bold ideas from the edge of possibility.
And welcome to Cutting Edge Consciousness. Freeman Michaels here.
With Barnet Bain. Good moment. And I had to think about it. Who else? I'm looking over at my dear friend Stewart Emery, who's in studio.
You gave away the guest.
I did. For the 5 of you listening in the car. So now you know. And there's no more suspense. But I'm looking over at Stewart, and I'm thinking to myself, who is that guy? So it's Barnet Bain, Good Moment, and Stewart Emery in studio, live in studio.
Yeah, isn't that fun? Because last time he was on, we promised that next time he would be in studio.
We delivered.
We delivered.
It's good. We just wanted.
It's rare.
We wanted.
But it's good to deliver.
We want it on record.
I don't know. I get suspicious of people that fulfill a New Year's resolution a couple of days early.
That's kind of. We're.
But we don't air until
That's
after
cutting
New
edge.
Year's,
That's cutting edge. Dude.
We're fulfilling last year's resolution. This is last year's resolution, but we delivered. So, Freeman, how are you?
I'm good.
There's a very, very interesting vibe that happens right around New Year's Eve. There's this kind of, there's almost a silence. There's just this quiet that happens. It reminds me a little bit of what happens around Thanksgiving, but it does not have the gratitude piece. It just has, it just is the quality of a motor racing and somebody blessedly putting in the clutch. So it's just, you just feel like, you can just feel everybody kind of taking a breath, and it's an interesting quality.
Yeah, well, that's, for me, there's a lot of different ways to approach the space between Christmas and New Year's, to fill it with something. In fact, it's interesting because one of the things I wanted to do today is I wanted to get together with Susan Leahy, our mutual friend, who I'm working with this year.
Yep.
And I wanted to put down some qualities that we want to co-create with our work together in the new year.
Yeah.
Since I have you here, maybe you and I could do that too. What's the quality of experience we want to generate going forward in the next year with this show? Thoughts?
Absolutely. Whatever it is that I want to do, this is the tip of the hat to my friend Stewart. I want to be a good one. So this is probably
whatever I do, I want to be a good one.
A fairly interesting segue.
Okay.
We should probably introduce the good-looking guy here.
The handsome guy in the room.
We found him actually at the Coffee Bean.
We did.
We're pleased to welcome here an acclaimed educator, an author. He's also a doctor, which, you and I are very, very dear friends, and I didn't know that you were a doctor. You certainly have never prescribed for anything for me.
Hey, you never asked.
You never asked. A doctor, the first president of EST.
Yes.
Now Landmark Education, the founder of Actualizations.
Yep. Author of several books that we love.
More books than I've read. A Renaissance man. And I'm very, very delighted that you're here, and I'm very delighted to admit that you are among my very, very dearest friends.
Thank you. And, I love it that we're dear friends, and you got to introduce me. You got to look up my bio, and what I love about that is our friendship isn't dependent upon our public persona or our bio, what the world thinks we are.
That's awesome. Right. In fact, it's interesting because on occasion we have not had the bio for whatever reason, and I appreciate sometimes those introductions. You know, the introductions of what we love about the person, what we enjoy about the person, rather than their, like you just said, their public,
yes,
acclaim, whatever the heck they've
personas.
Done.
Yeah. Well, this idea that you launched into, Freeman, about what is in store intentionally for the coming year, and as I said, whatever it is, and we can drill down into it and explore it a little bit. I do want to be a good one. With whatever that is. And off the top, I think there is a great value. We had, last week, we had the Wives Show. And we are very, we're very focused on being a good one with respect to those marriages, nurturing the space of those relationships. Equally, it is important to me and to be a good one when it comes to my friendships. I believe that my life at this point is very much organized around satisfying work and meaningful relationships. And so, what are the qualities of being a good one when it comes to being a friend? What are the qualities of being a masterful friend?
Yeah, it's great. It's a great question. Stewart, thoughts on that?
Yes, it's a big issue in a good way for me. I grew up as a little kid in a boarding school for rich kids, and I came from the wrong side of the tracks, and I was impoverished.
Can I borrow $1?
And so I says, organizer. So I, this kind of little kid asthmatic kid, always getting beaten up, and I didn't have any friends.
Yeah.
And I have wonderful friends now. And so you say, well, what changed? Well, firstly, I'm married to a wonderful woman whose name is Joni. And she's a master of friendship. She's got a doctorate in friendship. And so she has friendships that go back, I shouldn't tell you on air, but over 50 years.
She's in the car right now and wincing.
So but she's honored and treasured friendships that go back to when she was preteen, I just think is magnificent. But I think the clue to me, when we're... Stevie Joseph, at our friend Stevie Joseph, said, you shouldn't call yourself a coach. That isn't what you do. I said, well, what do I do? He said, well, you're a kind of like freelance catalyst and thought partner. Because you get people to think about their lives in ways they haven't before. But one of the things we do when we're doing that with people is we ask them, well, tell me something that works about you. And then, well, that's interesting. I'll tell you what I think works about you. So Barnet and I were playing this game. And Barnet said, well, that's very interesting, Stuart. I understand, you like being smart and you're proud of that and yada, yada, yada. But, I don't think that's what works about you. In fact, what works about you does work about you in spite of all of that. He says, what I think works about you is that you're a great lover. I'm saying this on Cheryl Esposito's show. I'm telling the story. And she said, and he knows this. How? And I said, yes, well, I asked him the same story.
That got everyone's attention.
Everybody's attention. But he went on to say, not just a lover of people, you're a lover of things done well.
Yes.
You're a lover of the potential in things. Because I had Alex Mandosian over one day for coffee at our house in Belvedere, and I'm making him a cappuccino. We have a seriously good espresso machine in the house, a Malabazoga GS3.
We covered that last time.
Yeah, I know. Most people don't know what it is, but the people who
now
know.
He's good at it.
No!
Now he's good at it.
So anyhow, I'm pulling him coffee, and he says, I think putting human potential label on you is a disservice. You're in the potential business.
You're in the humor potential.
Yeah, well, you're looking to get the essence out of the bean.
Yes.
Yeah.
So having said all of that, I think that to be a great friend, I think there are some skills involved in that, and it's an investment of time and an investment of love. And it's an investment in oneself, because if you don't know who you are, you can't be a good friend to somebody.
Yes.
There's another... That isn't happening.
And there's another piece as well. First of all, one of the concepts that I love about your work, the who's in your room concept, which of course is one of your books.
Yes.
But it's really brilliant to really look at who am I inviting in? And the second part about that is, what am I inviting them into, right? So the space, and we've talked about this, Barnet, a couple times, the space between us that allows for both of us to feel like we're seen and we matter and we're heard. And so my thought, just to add into this, is also the space that of my offer as a friend, how I show up for people, with people, That's a piece of the puzzle. I'm just chucking things into the pot that we're stewing right now.
No, I like that. Another thing, I think it was Thoreau said, a friend asks only of another friend that they do not betray their high regard for them.
Well, that has to do very much, I think, with what you are speaking of, this space, the space between. The space between in a friendship is an unknown space. It requires a self-knowing in order to enter the space between in a friendship. You have to suspend judgments, preconceived ideas. It is a virgin space where you discover intimacy as if for the very, very first time. And in many ways, it is the very first time. It requires an ability to recreate that.
It's a very skilled thing. I mean, I like what you're saying. One of the things I've said before many times is I never knew my first wife. It's almost like a joke at this point, but I didn't, because I think she just simply played a role.
She's coming on in the second segment.
That's right. We've got
we
hold
have
of
a
her.
big surprise.
We found her in Europe, and she's coming.
Big surprise.
But what I want to say about that is what was limited for both of us is I couldn't see her. It was who I needed her to be so that I felt okay about myself. It was really just a projection. And I know lots of early friendships where they were just playing a role in my life, a role that I needed them to be this way, or there was no friendship, right? And lots of those friendships have gone by the wayside. These are my, early.
You needed them to show up in ways that supported your idea of who you were.
Exactly.
How you wanted to be.
Exactly. And what you're saying,
highly conditional,
or perhaps we're all saying, is that this space of friendship where I'm not requiring you to be anything. In fact, the space.
Yes, but I think friendship requires that we are something.
Yes, good point. So bring that.
And that would be that we are ourselves. We do a thing when we start workshops. Say, okay, so how many of you people into like self-improvement? Oh yeah, that's why we're here. Yeah. I said, well, I got good news and bad news. The self doesn't need improvement. That's perfect. The rest of you, not so much.
Right.
Well, and a lot of issues.
Well, the improvement part becomes its own trap. That the whole idea that something needs to be fixed or changed is the problem.
But the improvement is the really taking away of all of the guises that hide the self.
Yes.
And then Stevie Joseph and I got another riff the other day. We were talking about spontaneity, and this does come back to friendship. And he said, I get tired of people saying, well, you've got to be spontaneous. If who you are is so unclear to you that you're just bumbling around, then all acts of spontaneity are really like gross. You should think of jazz. Stevie's a good jazz guitarist, and he said, think of jazz. We love the spontaneous improvisation of jazz, but we forget that in order for the spontaneity of the improvisation to be totally pleasurable, then the musician
have to be skilled,
have to be masters of their instrument and their genre.
Yes.
You don't abandon rules and structure until you are so intimate with the rules of structure that you can transcend them. But in any creative act, and certainly friendships are creative acts. If they're not creative acts, they're stale and they're just by rote. But it's a living creative thing, and it always involves having a sense of knowing who you are and being willing to be changed.
Yeah. So if we take forward that jazz metaphor, then the spontaneity of friendship that we love, the laughter, the jokes, Barnet and I can finish each other's lines oftentimes. We know what's coming next. But all of that, I believe, takes some mastery of the self, just as in a jazz musician's case, it takes mastery of the instrument and the musical genre. So I think for people to be great friends, they do have to learn to become great lovers. And that starts with mastery of the self and love of the self. Not in a self-obsessed way, but in a healthy and a real way.
That's beautiful. Go ahead.
No,
one of the qualities of our friendship, which I can bring up in the minute we have before we have to take a commercial break, and maybe we'll get back to more of, is the honoring. So this is kind of hearkening back a little bit to the wives' show, how my wife can call me out in a way where I don't feel killed, but where there's growth and there's learning. And one of the things I value about our friendship is that you stay in relationship, specifically when things get hard, when we're in our stuff, right? And that's, I always say, you'll stand in the fire with me. And there's a handful of people in my life who I can say that about. I'm not inviting hard times, but they come. Situations where there's misunderstandings or whatever happens, circumstances, and that there are certain people have the self-awareness, mastery of friendship, I don't know what the language is, to stay in relationship. That is a huge sort of threshold for me of noting, is this a person I can really be a friend to?
You are triggering a lot of thoughts for me, a lot of feelings for me, things that I want to bring up. But before we bring up those, we are going to put in the clutch, and we're going to hear from the sponsors of this show. And we will be back right after these words from these incredible supporters of Cutting Edge, incredible supporters of Cutting Edge Consciousness. We'll be right back.
Stay with us.
Welcome back to Cutting Edge Consciousness, thought-provoking discussions and bold ideas from the edge of possibility.
Thanks for staying with us. This is Barnet. I'm here with Freeman and our guest in studio, Stewart Emery. So before the break, your hand was waving. You had a thought. You're crawling out of your skin there.
Well, I like where Freeman was going with this about friendships are about supporting growth, and that requires movement through the hard times. And I remembered that Stuart Brandt, whole
catalog.
Yeah, said when we all rebelled in the 60s, lost sight of how much the society was held together by the web of good manners. And he started a finishing school. But he said, there's three kinds of relationships. There's friendships. There's the social relationships that are held together by good manners. So you're respectful and welcoming to the woman who's checking you out at the grocery store or the person delivering the mail. And that's just their daily interactions, and they should be gracious and held together with good manners. And then he said, then there's family members with whom you can only cope. But he said, but he said, now let's go to this idea of friendship. And he said, for me, the idea of friendship that's a commitment to a relationship that has at its core the intention of transformation of both parties.
Mm-hmm. It's fantastic.
And I did a talk called Conscious Love, in which I said, conscious love has as its only objective that the beloved fully actualize their own inherent potential, independent of the consequences to the lover, which is saying a similar thing. So I think that love does produce transformation.
Well, there's a huge component in what you're speaking of, and I recognize it in some, though not all, of my relationships, but some. I am able to hold my friends, some, in a place of loving not for what they do, but for who they are. And that is it seems to me is a major component.
It's huge.
Of creating a space that affords an opportunity and allows the other to actualize.
And I think we're back to the space part of the conversation. So look, there is space in our friendship for me to disagree. There's space in our relationship for me to have a bad day. There's space in the relationship for me. Whereas we go back to my first wife, when the story of our marriage and our romance cracked, and it cracked very quickly because we were both soap stars and we were both doing what we were doing and living off the Sunset Strip and yada yada yada, and then we came apart very quickly. There was no depth to it, right? And so immediately we split. The quality of my marriage today is that we've been through bankruptcy, we've been through, death of close family members, we've been through a lot of things that would have broken other relationships, but it has the quality, the space, the relationship, it has space in it for all that.
Yeah, I love this idea of space. It was a huge theme of Est. One theme of Est was the theme of aliveness, which was a contribution I brought to Est. And Werner talked a lot about space. And I love that concept where you create space for things. And if you look at a good friendship or a good marriage, It has spaciousness.
Yes.
Nowadays, this idea of space and the way that you are holding it is very different from how it's promulgated now as tolerance. Tolerance and space are very different things. Very different things. There is a tightness to tolerance. Space is a completely different relationship. I'm not going to look at wherever you're pointing. Completely different relationship. What are you doing there?
I'm doing nothing. I like to point. I'm a pointer.
That's great. So, how do you see the distinction between? This is a two-part question: space and tolerance. And
It's a trick question, 2 parts. At my age,
Well, that's why I just want. I want to make sure you can follow.
right?
So the other part is, what do you think is the relationship between vulnerability and authenticity as it relates to this idea of space?
Okay, if I go back to the first thing, or was it the second thing?
party
like
of
a
the
movie
first
scene.
part.
Yeah, right.
Start wherever you want.
Right.
We'll pick up the rest. We got you here.
Start like that. Stewart Emery, present.
Somebody said I'm so stuck in the future. It's no good asking me anything about the past. But anyhow, so if we look at this distinction between allowing space or creating space and tolerance, to me, space and spaciousness provide context in which things can come into existence or in which they can happen. And then we can look at them, contemplate them, see if there's value in them, whatever. Tolerance assumes that this thing has happened and you're kind of gritting your teeth to be nice about it.
It's not generous space.
It's not a generous space at all, tolerance.
No.
Because tolerance, it kind of implies linguistically, as the word lives today, with judgment.
Yes.
If I hear tolerance, I'll tolerate that. It's like, I feel the contraction.
Yeah.
I have space for that.
Yeah, there's not a lot of love. I mean,
No.
there's not, I don't want to make love to someone who's tolerating me. That's my
You do
wife.
have a way with words. That's very good.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
That paints the picture immediately.
Yeah,
doesn't it?
yeah. If my wife is simply tolerating me, I
I
don't
want to make love to
that.
somebody who's creating space for me. Oh, that works.
Now
Yeah.
that's nice.
Yes.
That's a juicy idea.
Yeah.
Yes, we better change topic before we get beep, beep, beep. What was the second
That's
part of
not
the
an
question?
episode.
Can you remember that? I can't remember.
I don't think this is
No,
not an
it had to do with
FCC
vulnerability.
boundary
The,
here.
the vulnerability components.
Vulnerability and authenticity.
Yeah,
as components
as it
of
relates
space.
to authenticity.
Yeah, so vulnerability, I think, in a friendship means that I am open to my friend having an impact on me,
Oh, there you go.
Willing to be changed.
willing to be changed. Barnet and I, in our love for each other, have changed each other. We've changed as a result of the friendship.
Yeah.
And there's so much spaciousness in the relationship. We are whoever we are, moment by moment by moment by moment. And in that kind of environment, the psyche has no incentive to put on a pretense.
Yeah. And there is no agenda.
No agenda.
One of the things about vulnerability, I remember, I won't give any context for this. I remember just a conversation where someone said, I'm just being vulnerable. And they weren't. They were manipulating. So there was nothing generous in the sharing of their feelings because there was an agenda behind it, right? And part of what we're talking about in this space is the feelings that might come up. In this context, there's a sharing of them, right? It's not a manipulation. I'm sharing them. And it's not codependent. I'm not asking you to take care of my feelings. I'm just saying how it feels to be me, right? Because that's the nature of this space that we've created, called our friendship, or called the marriage, or called the relationship. So that's an interesting distinction, too, with the vulnerability is...
You can only be vulnerable holding a space, and the vulnerability lives at the edge of the space where you are unsure and uncertain of your own boundary. And then a softer side is revealed, one that does not have all the answers, one that is can potentially be hurt. And in the loving relationship of a friendship, the friends are mindful and respectful of that soft belly.
Yes, beautiful. And I think there's a competency issue. We're going back to sort of what you were saying in the beginning, which is in order to show up in this way, you have to have a certain maturity.
Correct.
Right? So you can share your feelings without making someone responsible for them. That is a maturity.
Yeah.
And then there can be a vulnerability that is very moment to moment. But I think that's something one gets to. Otherwise, it's pretty shaky ground.
Yeah, and the thing about the vulnerability, because I heard you just say, well, the edge of the space. Well, that's true. That's where the vulnerability lives, because actually what you're doing is it's like you're trying to break out of the egg as a little chick into being a bigger person outside the shell. And so the vulnerability is the breaking out, not the fear of breaking in. It's this fear of what happens if I break out of this shell and being vulnerable. Because otherwise you hold vulnerability as a contractive metaphor.
It becomes a structure and you live inside of it. And it's not vulnerable.
So true vulnerability to me is this expanding outwards. And the vulnerability is in the angst or the fear or the uncertainty of what happens when I step into a bigger world out of the shell I've been living in. And that's at the edge. And that's why love is the only way forward, because what really we want in a friendship is somebody to love us enough so we feel safe taking the risks of being who we think we might be, but aren't sure yet.
I love that. I love
that. Is beautifully
that.
said.
Who we think we might be, but aren't sure yet. And the nature of the friendship is it's the support to grow beyond who we've been. And that again harkens back to, it's not about who I need you to be in order for me to be safe, right? That's not the agreement. This agreement that we're the space wherein it's built in, just like it's built into our marriages. And I'm guessing this is true for you, Stewart, as well, that change is welcome here,
So we have on our website like 15,000 friends.
Yes. Yeah.
This brings up the importance of nurturing a friendship. A friendship lives in time and it lives in space. We've explored the space component, but it lives in time as well. And the degree to which a friendship can be intimate, there is a relationship to how much it is prioritized, how much it is fed energetically, how much it is committed to. In a marriage, we understand these vows very clearly. We understand the post office vows and marriage vows. Rain, hail, sleet, snow, any kind of stuff.
Right. We're delivering, baby.
Pretty much the same vows for marriage. Any kind, rich or poor, rain, slail, we're there. But I understand the necessity of it because it creates sort of little handrails, a little walker, in order to support us while we are developing the mastery of relationship. And inside a friendship, likewise, it requires tending. You have to focus it. You can be friendly without devoting attention.
Yeah, so you can be friendly without that being a friendship. I want to go back to you talking about your marriage. Not to embarrass you and humiliate you, but...
Why not?
Why not?
We'll risk that.
We'll risk that, no. But to the point of you both playing roles there.
You think of my first marriage?
Yeah, your first marriage.
Yeah.
First marriage.
Oh, we can slap that one up there.
Yeah. So you're both in a role there. You're both playing that out.
Totally.
And until you're over that, to your point, you haven't developed enough certainty in who one is. And I think a lot of people, my son who's an engineer talked about going through the phase of being like the guy on The Imitation Game, this nerdy nerd that had no social skill whatsoever, to learning to method act his way through social situations to now able to be totally himself. And we go through those phases. And I think a lot of people are just method acting their way through life. So there's no self there to have a relationship with. There's no friendship under those circumstances. And that's the skill to start to shed those things that you're not.
Yeah.
So this is the reason that we have, that there is such a thing as self-work and transformational work. It's very easy to become addicted to that. It's very easy to move past what am I going to get out of self-knowing into, in terms of self-understanding, into a if I just know a little bit more, if I could just fix this last thing, I will be better able to control. And that's not at all what you're talking about. You're talking about having a certain baseline intimacy with what runs you and how you respond and react to life, so that you don't have to react habitually and can create space for yourself and for others. It's a very different thing.
Kagan of Harvard, who wrote a thing called Why People Don't Change, came up with a metaphor I liked a lot, where he talked about the socialized mind, the self-authoring mind, and then the self-transforming mind. So we go through this process of being socialized. That's usually catastrophe. And the most successful people in life are traditionally those who failed at all attempts to socialize them successfully. But then they become self-authoring, so I'll do it my way, the Sinatra line or the Richard Branson, a way of doing life. And then you get these extraordinary leaders. I think of Tim Cook as one in this category, where you're aware that you're writing a script, and you're aware that you're creating your own reality, and you're aware of your own biases in doing so. And so self-transformation is to discount, moment by moment, the distortion introduced by the biases you have that you're conscious of.
That's great.
And to create a space for them.
Yeah.
You're back
Right,
to
because
create a space for them.
Yeah.
You have now a loving relationship with that those aspects of self, and now there is room in that space for something emergent.
Yeah, because there's the recognition, acknowledgement that they're in the room is required, right?
Correct. Totally required.
Right. Yeah.
And most people don't even see that they're in the room, let alone
That there is a
acknowledge
room.
they're in the room.
Yeah.
Or say, I have this bias about this.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really a powerful space. Again, this, and I'm using the room. What's the room? Who am I as a room, as a space that invites people into relationship? What's the space that I create in my...
See, I love the idea. We did Who's in Your Room, and we're about to do it as a mainstream book. And I said to Bain, I want to change the title. He said, what do you want to call it? I say, I want to call it Get a Room and Make Love to Life. And he just like, no, you can't do that. He sounded like... Where are you? Are you back in the conservatism of the 50s, man? What you're killing me here.
What is the room? What is the space that you're capable of creating?
Yes.
Where we all. Yeah. I don't know if people get in the room. How many of us in the room? Right now, there's three of us.
That's right.
Well, Spencer's over there pulling triggers, but the three of us are engaged in a way.
Correct.
That's very. And I'm going to use a word. We're about to take a break, so again, I keep lining these things up. Drop a big grenade in the middle, but sacred. The sacredness of the space that we're creating, right? Because one of the things we've said before on the show is that a soulful conversation is something that changes you. Just like what you were saying earlier about a friendship where you're willing to be changed in relationship. You're open to an idea that could change everything.
And it takes place in a sacred space.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. With that, we're going to take a quick break. We'll come back. So
we'll
stay with us in this
space
sacred space here on Cutting Edge Consciousness.
Welcome back to Cutting Edge Consciousness, thought-provoking discussions and bold ideas from the edge of possibility.
And we're back here on Cutting Edge Consciousness. Freeman Michaels, Barnet, Bain, and Stewart Emery talking about sacred space, creating a sacred space.
Sacred space. Well, this idea of sacred space, this is the container for being a good one. What is required to have excellence, first of all, is the sacred space. You have to come at it with that bewilderment. But to be a good one, we've talked about largely in the context of friendships. We've been discussing friendships mostly.
Be a good friend.
The qualities of being a good friend, underneath the form of that, the function of it remains the same if you're going to be a good one, if you're going to be a good anything, if you're going to be a good cook, bottle washer, husband, engineer, whatever it is that you aspire to excellence in, has the same qualities. So, Stewart, you have been talking for a while about this book that Simon & Schuster just picked up from you, Be a Good One. And we've been talking a bit about your plans to expand that franchise out so that these ideas can be explored across a range of expressions?
Well, that's a series of sound bites. When EST began, Erhard asked me to do an encounter group for he and his staff, and that turned out to be the birth of EST. And I went in the Town Hall Metaphysical Bookstore and found a little book called Aliveness. I thought that's a great theme for what we're going to be doing. And aliveness was health, wealth, and full self-expression.
I think I have that lecture.
Yeah, health, wealth, happiness, and full self-expression.
You delivered that lecture. You recorded it. I think I had
did.
that.
So anyhow, fast forward, I remember watching a show with Joseph Campbell, interviewed by Bill Moyer, and Moyer says, well, isn't what people really want out of life deep sense of meaning? He said, no, not at all. But I think what people want out of life is a great experience of being alive. So we're back to aliveness. So then when you fast forward, I noticed when we did Success Built to Last, and you're talking to 300 or 400 of the most successful people on earth, all the usual suspects and big names.
Did he talk to you, Freeman?
No, he missed me.
I didn't know him yet.
I wasn't on the short list.
He wasn't on the short list. I know. I'm sorry.
He's going to...
Richard Branson,
I'm not,
Steve Jobs, and Freeman Michaels.
I'm not going to name drop. I don't like that. But what you say, so on talk shows, they say, well, what do these people have in common?
Well.
And it got back to love again. They all found out what it is they love to do. And that's become a platitude. But more than that, they learned how to become world-class at it. And then for the people who were really successful, it had redeeming social value, that thing that they loved to do. So the world was a better place, or the people around them felt more alive as a result of them doing what they did.
And what's the relationship of mentorship in that?
So mentorship is, again, a creation of space. I mean, coaching tends to be, well, you do this, you do that. It's very goal-bound usually. But mentorship is a creation of space in which you can take risks, make mistakes, and be loved through the correction process of altering what you do to become better at it next time. Because it's only, it's a little mistake and an improvement, a little mistake and an improvement. You're always a little bit off course, so you're trying to get the correction tightened down. But I've seen amazing things, particularly in the world of coffee, where I've watched two baristas competing each other in world championships, coaching each other with love to bring their best game to the final competition.
This was the original idea of the Olymp. This was the Olympic idea. It wasn't simply crush it. It was about to inspire through competition to uplift the self and the other.
Well, that's the original meaning of the word.
It is,
competition means to strive together, right? That's the actual meaning of the word. We've distorted it because
crush it.
We have this culture of win, of we're trying to win all the time. And the challenge is it's an immature kind of space, if you will, where everyone gets objectified, right? Versus a different model of winning where it's inclusive, where we welcome in other people's mastery so that we can grow, right? This is a
quality. This is a quality of being a good one.
Yeah, I remember lying in a hotel room in Singapore watching two of the great tennis players. It may have been McEnroe and somebody, or Bourne somebody. I don't remember who they were. But the question they were given was, why do you love to play each other in the Grand Slams? I said, it's easy. When we play each other, we each play the best tennis of our lives.
Yeah, we bring out the best in each other.
We bring out the best in each other. And so that was really what the Olympics was supposed to be about. And you see that in any group of people who are a great team. You see it in basketball. You see it in
business.
See it in business, entertainment, where people just bring out the best in each other, and that's the deal. But they're loving it.
Yeah.
They're just loving it.
I had, when I was in a studio, an acting studio for 9 years, and one of my best friends, Barnet, you're Barnet, one of my best friends too, Chopper Burnett, we would compete. And we were best of friends because he was so extraordinarily talented that it drew out in me exactly what you're saying. I love that. I love that kind of quality where someone's extraordinariness invites me to be extraordinary.
Yeah.
So are these qualities that they certainly can be modeled, but can they be taught, or are they passed on through modeling?
So I think that at the end of the day, I don't believe we know why somebody loves to do this and not that. We come up with theories until we find something psychologists like, but we're just making it up. but you're really clear if people love something. I mean, people make the transition from living through the ideas about life to living through the experience
That's
of
a
life.
huge distinction.
Huge distinction.
Huge distinction. Yeah.
Because most people just live in a world of ideas about things.
Well, and look, we've talked about this on the show, where most of us are taught to think in outcomes.
Correct.
Right? Which is unfortunate because that's someone else's experience. We're living someone else's life, right?
Correct.
If we want their outcome, well, that's their outcome.
That's their outcome.
The genius, the space in between us that is yet to emerge, is quality-based. It's function-based versus the form it takes. We don't care about the form.
Correct.
That's where the aliveness dwells in that space in between, and that space is inhabited by our physicality, by our bodies.
Right.
It's not in the head.
What I think we've learned is this. You do have to love it. There is this space called love. It's not a verb, it's not a noun, not an adjective, it's a space. And so we have to hold what we're doing in a spaciousness of love. So that's requirement number one. And you either have stumbled across that or you haven't. The next step is most people don't know how to get good at anything because they don't teach that at school. And I've spent... they don't.
It's true.
So I've spent 20 years trying to crack the cosmic code on how do you actually get good at something. And we have cracked the cosmic code. And it's understanding the true purpose of goals. It's not a goal way out there in the future. That's a mission or a purpose. But you don't get better, for example, going out and hitting 200 golf balls per hour. You only go out there and say, well, I'll hit 200 golf balls, and the goal is to get within 10 feet of the tee or 2 feet or whatever that is, but you go out and measure whether you got better or not. So getting better at something requires repetition, practice, and relentless measurement.
And love.
Well,
You got to love it.
All of that has to take place in a container filled with love. So the spaciousness of the container must be filled with love.
I'm going to add another. I mean, I know that the other piece is mentoring and or perhaps friendship. That there's folks around us who also love it, you know? Part of what this show is, I hope we've intended this from the very beginning, is it's both Barnet and I love conversation.
Yeah.
It's a huge metaphor for me, for my entire life. I look at my life as a giant conversation, right? And then I see when I'm in a conversation how much my world reflects that back to me. That's the nature of how I live my life. And the show, we didn't want to do an interview show. We didn't want to take people's books and try to figure out what the questions were or take their publicist questions and ask them. That wasn't interesting to us. We want to invite people into a space, into a room, either literally in the case that you're in the room or via some telephone or something, and then throw something in the middle and stir it around. That quality of compatriots in the growth process, in what we love.
Correct.
It could be golf. I don't golf, but that could be a great metaphor. But for us, it's conversation. But I love this.
Yeah. Well, the thing about golf is people is always measurement. Every time you hit the ball is measurement. That's why people love it, because they know whether they're doing better or not so much.
Well, we measure by how many people tune into the show. I guess that's how we measure. I don't know if that's
that's a reasonable measurement.
Yeah.
Is it necessary to measure? I mean, there is the original term amateur. It came from the French, aimer. It was just a lover of it, and there was not measurements. It was done for the love of the game.
Well, maybe the measure, because I think one of the measures that we have organized around is how did it feel to us. I think sometimes the challenge with the metric of how many people listened is some of our best shows don't have the biggest numbers.
But very often we externalize it. It becomes extrinsic as opposed to, well, how does it feel?
Yes.
But you see, the metric in friendship is the inner experience.
Yes.
The experience of how we are together.
I think in art, because look, this is, I love what you're talking about excellence and where it's measurable, great. But artists who are prolific oftentimes aren't recognized till after they're dead, and they didn't do it because they were getting back measurements that they were getting better at it. You know what I'm saying? So it's interesting because it kind of throws a curveball.
But an experiential measurement of friendship for me is my friends are people around whom I like myself best, in whose presence I like myself
that's
best.
Fantastic. And the mentor is like that as well.
Correct.
The mentors are the people who see me in a light that I want to inhabit.
Yeah, and they stretch me, so I find out I'm more tomorrow than I was afraid of being less yesterday. And I like myself more in the spaciousness of tomorrow, where I've discovered the more of me.
How true is it that we can know who we are by the circle of friends we keep? How true do you think that is?
Oh, I think that's incredibly true.
I think it is too. And I think that the greatest potential, again, for talking back to your book, is who's in your room. Who are you inviting into a space, and what are you co-creating? Because again, what we've said, my favorite experience as an actor was always an ensemble, because everyone was contributing, and then what came out, the genius of the more than the sum of the parts, right? And genius is never something you plan; it's something you stumble upon. You kind of get lucky. It's a grace, right? Like, woo, this is cool. Who knew? But there's a way to be good at it enough so it's more possible, more likely.
If you're good at it, you become a vehicle through which genius and passion
you can
express.
improve the odds.
That's it.
Now you're a conduit through which that can express. Otherwise, you're simply you're learning the craft.
Yeah.
Mastery is an entirely different game. Now you are a channel for something.
Yeah.
I always wanted to write a book. If you know who you are, buy this book and become somebody else.
Very short book.
Very short book, yes.
There's a workshop, too.
Hey, let's talk about workshops.
Well, let's talk a little bit about workshops.
'cause I
So
know there's some
you
stuff
are
coming up.
planning a workshop. It looks incredibly exciting. It's in Marin on the...
January 18th evening it starts.
So we want to send people to, is it stewartemery.com?
Yeah, stewartemery.com. It's on the landing page. And it's a workshop like this, a conversation and guided meditations. I call them learning contemplations. And it's about how do you reinvent yourself through the passage of time to live fully alive through the duration of your life. How do you live fully alive?
So for those of you listening who are drawn to this, you can discover more about it at www.stewartemery.com. EMERY.
So the last time you were here, Barnett asked you a question, and we didn't have time, and we do today. When was the last time that you did something for the first time? When was the last time that you did something?
You thought you were going to get past that question.
But a moment ago was when I did something for the first time.
I think that's the nature of aliveness.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
moment
it's
ago.
the nature of spontaneity.
Yeah.
When we talk about spontaneity, that is on the shoulders of self-knowing.
Yeah.
We can treat every moment as if for the first time. It's a challenge.
It is a challenge.
Have I got can I tell a really quick story on myself?
Yeah, of course.
So I'm lying in a hospital bed recently, and Joni's there spending the night with me, and after I had major surgery, and so her bed's looking at my bed. So we're looking at each other, and they want you to get lots of rest after surgery, so they wake you up every 2 hours. I haven't figured what out that's about. So anyhow, I get to see Joni bathe.
Are you okay?
Yeah, I see Joni bathe in this beautiful, luminous life, and she looks the most beautiful I have ever seen her look. And I'm thinking, well, it'd be really interesting to see if she still looks that way when the morphine wears off. So anyhow, the morphine wears off, I'm still beautiful, more beautiful. And I thought, what's that about? And I thought, she's absolutely established in this spaciousness, this spirit, this consciousness, you lose words, of love. And I'm so grateful that I experienced being in the way of that. Because you realize that when you're in that space, if somebody gets in the way, they will experience being loved by you. And I thought, I have a reputation of being a curmudgeon, and I thought, my God, what if the end of the day, this is what it's all about, Alfie? It is about love. Oh my God, if I admit that in public, my whole
Your whole
cover,
rap, your entire rap is blown.
Yeah, my whole act is blown.
Well, I'm glad you did it here on Cutting Edge Consciousness. That we
We'll
officially...
lead with that as we promote the show.
That's right.
It's been a pleasure
Awesome.
having you with us. It's
Always a gift.
pleasure to
Thank
be
you
with
so
you.
much.
We thank you all for tuning in, and we invite you to tune in again next week here on Cutting Edge Consciousness.
Thanks for listening.